They took photos while the alien girl drowned, until one human dove and screaming grabbed my hand. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. The sunset cast an amber glow over Lake Meridian, where humans and visitors from across the galaxy gathered for the annual Interspecies Cultural Festival, none aware that the serene waters would soon become the stage for both humanity's shame and redemption. The festival had been a smashing success so far. 5 years after first contact, Earth had become a popular destination for numerous spacefaring civilizations. Tourism boards worldwide had scrambled to capitalize on the influx of alien visitors eager to experience Earth's unique biosphere and diverse cultures. Lake Meridian, with its crystal-clear waters and surrounding pine forests, had become one of the premier destinations for the more adventurous extraterrestrial travelers. Ethan Cole wiped sweat from his brow as he finished setting up the last of the souvenir stands. At 32, he'd never imagined he'd be working festival security after 12 years as a paramedic, but budget cuts had hit his department hard. The private security gig paid well, and he'd been able to put his emergency training to use at several events over the past year. Still, he missed the adrenaline rush of saving lives. All stands secure in Sector 4, he reported into his radio. Heading to the waterfront for my next patrol. Copy that, came the staticky reply from his supervisor. Keep an eye on the swimming area. Some of these aliens don't understand water safety. Ethan chuckled. Roger that. The festival grounds were packed with a colorful array of beings from across the galaxy. Tall, willowy Eridani with their iridescent skin browsed Earth art displays. Stocky Taurans with their distinctive ridged foreheads sampled barbecue from a dozen Earth cultures. Near the water's edge, a group of amphibious Nereidans performed synchronized swimming demonstrations that defied the laws of physics. As Ethan made his way through the crowd, he noticed a family of Lamari near the designated swimming area. The Lamari were one of the newer species to visit Earth, having only established diplomatic relations in the past year. They resembled humans in basic form, but had skin that shifted in subtle hues of blue and violet, large almond-shaped eyes, and delicate features that humans often found eerily beautiful. Their homeworld was mostly desert, with small, precious oases, meaning most Lamari had never encountered large bodies of water. The family consisted of what appeared to be 2 parents and a young female child who looked about equivalent to a human 8-year-old. The parents were busy examining a cultural display while their daughter stared at the lake with undisguised fascination. Ethan made a mental note to keep an eye on them as he continued his patrol. The swimming area had human lifeguards, but they were currently occupied with a large group of rowdy teenagers at the far end of the cordon section. For the next 20 minutes, Ethan circled through his assigned area, breaking up a minor dispute between a human vendor and a Tauran customer, and helping an elderly woman find her grandchildren. When he returned to the waterfront, his heart sank. The Lamari parents were frantically looking around, calling out in their musical language, clearly distressed. Their daughter was nowhere to be seen. Ethan rushed over to them. Is everything okay? Are you looking for your child? The male Lamari turned to him, eyes wide with panic. Our daughter, Mira. She was just here, looking at your Earth water. We turned away for only a moment. Ethan scanned the shoreline, then the water. There, about 30 meters out, he spotted a small blue form thrashing weakly in the water beyond the designated swimming area. There, he pointed, already kicking off his shoes. She's in the water. The Lamari parents gasped in horror. The father started to rush toward the water but stumbled at the edge, clearly terrified of entering it himself. Stay here, Ethan ordered, pulling off his security jacket. I'll get her. By now, a small crowd had gathered, pointing at the struggling alien child. To Ethan's disgust, many had pulled out their phones and were recording the scene rather than calling for help. Some were even laughing, apparently thinking the alien's struggle was some kind of performance or publicity stunt. That's not a show, Ethan shouted as he pushed through the onlookers. She's drowning. Call the lifeguards. But the lifeguards were still dealing with the situation at the other end of the beach, too far away to respond quickly. And the crowd, a mix of humans and various alien species, seemed more interested in documenting the event than helping. Ethan saw a young man adjust the filters on his camera app, carefully framing the shot of the drowning child. "Perfect for my xenobiology feed," the man muttered. "What is wrong with you people?" Ethan snarled as he shoved past. Without further hesitation, he dove into the lake. The September water was colder than he expected, but adrenaline kept him from feeling it as he swam powerfully toward the struggling child. Years of rescue training kicked in automatically as he cut through the water. The little Lamari girl was barely staying afloat now, her movements growing weaker by the second. As Ethan got closer, he could see the terror in her large eyes, the way her skin had paled to a sickly lavender. "Hang on," he called, though he wasn't sure if she understood English. "I'm coming." Just as he reached her, she slipped beneath the surface. Ethan took a deep breath and dove down, opening his eyes in the murky water. He spotted her small form sinking slowly, arms outstretched like a falling star. With powerful kicks, he propelled himself deeper and grabbed her arm. As he pulled her toward him, her eyes fluttered open, meeting his gaze with a look of pure fear. Ethan pulled her close to his chest with one arm and kicked hard toward the surface. They broke through into air with a splash, the girl limp in his arms. Ethan turned onto his back, positioning her across his chest as he began to sidestroke toward shore. "Grab my hand," he shouted as they approached the shallows where a few people, including the girl's parents, were now waiting out to meet them. The Lamari father reached out, trembling visibly at being in the water, but determined to reach his daughter. Their hands connected, and together they pulled the child to shore. Ethan laid her gently on the sand. She wasn't breathing. Without hesitation, he tilted her head back slightly and listened. No air movement. He placed his fingers against her neck, searching for a pulse point, relieved when he found a faint, rapid fluttering. "She needs rescue breathing," he announced, trying to recall what he knew about Lamari physiology from the brief cultural training security staff had received. They breathed oxygen like humans, but their lungs were slightly different. The crowd had grown larger, still filming but now with a hushed intensity. The girl's mother was keening in distress, a haunting sound that made the hair on Ethan's arms stand up. He had no choice. He'd have to try standard human CPR and hope it worked. Ethan positioned himself and began rescue breathing, careful not to force too much air too quickly. After 2 breaths, he watched her chest for movement. Nothing. 2 more breaths. Still nothing. "Come on, Mira," he murmured. "Breathe for me." On the 5th breath, her body suddenly convulsed. She turned to the side, coughing up lake water in violent spasms. Ethan supported her, relief flooding through him as color slowly returned to her skin, shifting from pale lavender back to a healthier blue. The Lamari parents fell to their knees beside their daughter, touching her face and hair with trembling hands, speaking rapidly in their language. The universal translators most visitors wore weren't waterproof, so Ethan couldn't understand their words, but their gratitude was unmistakable. A cheer went up from the crowd, many still recording with their devices. Ethan felt a flash of anger. Now they cheered? After standing by, recording a child's near death for their social feeds? But he pushed the anger aside, focusing on his patient. "She needs medical attention," he told the parents. "We have doctors here who know about Lamari physiology." As if on cue, the festival's medical team arrived, pushing through the crowd with a stretcher. Ethan gave them a quick rundown of what had happened as they examined the girl. "Good work," the lead doctor, Dr. Sharma, told him. "Another minute, and we'd be dealing with a diplomatic incident instead of a rescue." Ethan nodded grimly. Why were the lifeguards not watching this section? Dr. Sharma sighed. "Budget cuts. We're understaffed. And honestly, some of the human lifeguards are uncomfortable monitoring alien swimmers. They don't know what normal swimming looks like for each species." That wasn't good enough, but Ethan kept his opinion to himself as the medical team carefully transferred Mira to the stretcher. Her color was better now, and she was conscious, looking around with wide, frightened eyes. "You're going to be okay," Ethan told her, not sure if she understood. He mimicked breathing deeply, and to his surprise, she copied him, taking several deliberate breaths. As they prepared to transport her to the medical tent, her small hand suddenly shot out and gripped Ethan's wrist with surprising strength. She spoke, a musical trill that his translator couldn't catch. Her father leaned forward. "She says you pulled her from the great dark. She asks your name." "Ethan," he replied, gently squeezing her hand. "My name is Ethan Cole." The father nodded solemnly. "I am Vanner. My daughter is Mira. My maid is Linnea. The Lamari do not forget life debts. Ethan Cole, you have bound our families together by your actions today." Before Ethan could respond, the medical team indicated they needed to move. Reluctantly, Mira released his hand, and they whisked her away toward the medical tent, her parents following closely. As the crowd began to disperse, Ethan became aware of how cold and wet he was. His security uniform clung to him uncomfortably, and he was shivering slightly in the evening air. "That was incredible," said a voice beside him. A young woman was holding out a towel. "Here, you must be freezing." "Thanks," Ethan said, taking it gratefully. As he dried his face, he noticed she was still holding her phone, the camera app open. "Were you filming too?" She had the decency to look embarrassed. "Ah, yes. Everyone was. It's just instinct these days, you know. See something happening, record it." Instead of helping, Ethan couldn't keep the edge from his voice. "I wouldn't have known what to do," she protested. "And you were already going in." Ethan shook his head, too tired to argue. "Has anyone called my supervisor? I need dry clothes." "I did," said another security officer, jogging up. "He's bringing you a change of uniform." "Man, that was something else. You're all over the feeds already." Ethan groaned. "Great." By the time he'd changed and given his official statement to both festival security and the local police, the sun had set completely. The festival continued around him, lights twinkling in the trees, music and laughter filling the air as if nothing had happened. But something had shifted. As Ethan walked through the grounds, he noticed aliens and humans alike watching him, some nodding respectfully, others pointing and whispering. His radio crackled. "Cole, report to the VIP tent. The Lamari ambassador wants to speak with you." "Ambassador?" Ethan hadn't realized there was a Lamari dignitary at the festival. With a sigh, he changed direction, heading toward the large white tent reserved for official visitors. Outside the tent, two tall Lamari in formal attire stood guard. They straightened as Ethan approached, then surprised him by pressing their palms together and bowing slightly. "Ethan Cole," one said, his translator rendering his musical speech into flat English. "The one who saves children from water. You are expected. Please enter." Inside, the tent was dimly lit and scented with something like cinnamon and cloves. A small group of Lamari stood in a semicircle around a seated figure, an elderly female wearing elaborate robes embroidered with symbols that seemed to shift and change as she moved. Mira and her parents stood to one side. The child looked much better, her color vibrant again, though she stayed close to her mother's side. When she saw Ethan, she whispered something to her father. Vanner nodded and stepped forward. "Lifesaver Ethan Cole, may I present Ambassador Talura of the Lamari Confederation. She wishes to speak with you." Ethan bowed awkwardly, unsure of the proper protocol. "Ambassador, I'm honored." The elderly Lamari studied him with eyes that seemed to glow in the dim light. "Ethan Cole, you have done the Lamari people a great service today." Young Mira is the grandniece of Council Elder Zarin, a child of significant lineage. Ethan shifted uncomfortably. "I would have done the same for any child, Ambassador, regardless of lineage." A murmur ran through the assembled Lamari, and the ambassador's expression softened. "That is precisely why I wish to speak with you. Your actions today have been shared widely among our people." She gestured, and an aide stepped forward with a small device that projected a holographic image into the air. Ethan recognized himself diving into the water, swimming toward Mira, bringing her to shore, and performing rescue breathing. The footage had been compiled from multiple angles. All those people filming had captured the entire rescue from every possible perspective. "You see," the ambassador continued, "we Lamari come from a desert world. Water, in such vast quantities as you have here, is alien and frightening to us. Many of my people question the wisdom of sending our young to a world where drowning is possible. Today's incident might have confirmed those fears." She paused, her gaze intense. "Instead, it has shown us something about humanity we did not fully understand before." While many stood by, recording Mira's distress, you, without hesitation, risked yourself for a child not of your species. This has made an impression. Ethan swallowed hard. "Ambassador, I appreciate your words, but I need to address something. Those people filming instead of helping, that's not representative of humanity at its best. We're better than that. Or at least, we should be." The ambassador tilted her head, considering him. "Perhaps. Or perhaps it is the contrast that defines you. In any species, there are those who act and those who observe. What interests me is that when it mattered most, at least one human chose action over observation. One is sometimes enough." Before Ethan could respond, Mira stepped forward. Her father whispered something, and she spoke in careful, halting English. "Thank you for pulling me from the dark water, Ethan Cole. I was afraid, but then you came." Her translator must have been replaced after the incident. Ethan knelt to her level. "You're very brave, Mira. How are you feeling now?" "The healers made me well," she said, then added with childlike directness. "Water is beautiful but dangerous." "Yes," Ethan agreed. "But with proper training and respect, humans have learned to enjoy it safely. Perhaps you could too, someday." Her eyes widened at the thought. "Would you teach me?" The question caught Ethan off guard. He looked up at her parents, who were watching the exchange intently. Vanner spoke. "As I said earlier, you have created a life debt between our families, Ethan Cole. In our culture, this means a lasting connection. If you are willing, we would welcome your guidance in helping Mira overcome her fear of water when she is ready." "I would be honored," Ethan said, surprised at how much he meant it. The ambassador nodded approvingly. "Excellent. Now, there is one more matter to discuss." She gestured, and another aide stepped forward, bearing a small box. "The Lamari Confederation wishes to recognize your courage formally. This is the emblem of Sealdis, given to those who preserve life at risk to their own." The aide opened the box, revealing a pendant, a swirl of iridescent metal that seemed alive with color. Ethan shook his head. "Ambassador, that's very kind, but unnecessary. I was just doing my job." "Ah," the ambassador said with a slight smile. "But that is precisely why it must be given. On my world, we have a saying, duty reveals character. What one does when bound by obligation speaks, but what one does beyond obligation speaks louder." With a gentle solemnity, she placed the pendant around Ethan's neck. It was surprisingly light, and as it settled against his chest, it seemed to pulse once with warmth. "You honor me," Ethan said simply. "The honor is mutual," the ambassador replied. "Now, I believe there is quite a commotion outside. It seems your story has spread beyond this festival." As if on cue, Ethan's radio crackled again. "Cole, there are news crews at the main entrance asking for you. How do you want to handle this?" Ethan sighed. "I should go deal with this." The ambassador nodded. "Of course. But remember, Ethan Cole, while many of your kind were content to merely record history today, you chose to shape it. That distinction matters." As Ethan left the VIP tent, those words echoed in his mind. Outside, the festival was still in full swing, but there was a different energy now. Security officers nodded respectfully as he passed. Alien visitors watched him with curious eyes. Human attendees pointed and whispered. Near the main entrance, several news vans had parked, their satellite dishes extended. Reporters were setting up cameras, preparing for live broadcasts. A festival coordinator was frantically waving him over. "There he is," someone shouted, and suddenly Ethan was surrounded by microphones and cameras. "Mr. Cole, can you tell us what happened at the lake today? Were you afraid the alien physiology might be incompatible with human rescue techniques? How does it feel to be a hero to an alien species?" The questions came rapid fire, disorienting in their intensity. Ethan held up his hands. "Please, one at a time." A young reporter thrust her microphone forward. Sir, the video of your rescue has gone viral. Over 50 million views in just 3 hours. What do you say to that? Ethan blinked in surprise. 50 million? I don't know what to say to that. How about commenting on the dozens of bystanders who filmed the drowning child instead of helping? Asked another reporter, his tone accusatory. What does that say about humanity? Ethan considered the question carefully. The ambassador's words were still fresh in his mind. While many of your kind were content to merely record history today, you chose to shape it. It says we're complex, Ethan finally answered, capable of both shocking apathy and profound compassion. Today wasn't humanity's finest moment, but it wasn't our worst either. What matters is that we learn from it. And what should we learn? Pressed the reporter. Ethan looked directly into the camera. That in a world where everyone's first instinct is to record, sometimes we need to be reminded that our first responsibility is to help, to act, to care, not just for our own kind, but for anyone who needs it. He fingered the alien pendant at his neck. Today I was reminded that heroism isn't some grand, abstract concept. It's as simple as seeing someone in trouble and deciding to do something about it. Anyone could have done what I did. I just happened to be the one who did. Before the reporters could ask more questions, Ethan's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, surprised to see his former boss from the paramedic service calling. I need to take this, he said, stepping away from the microphones. Excuse me. Ethan, boomed the familiar voice of Chief Mendez when he answered. Just saw you on the news, pulling alien kids out of lakes now, are you? Despite everything, Ethan found himself smiling. Just the one, Chief. Well, it made quite an impression. I've got the mayor and 3 council members calling me, asking why we let you go in the first place. Budget's suddenly not such an issue anymore. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. What are you saying, Chief? I'm saying how fast can you get your paramedic certification renewed? I've got an opening with your name on it. Seems the city's creating a new position, Interspecies Emergency Response Specialist. Pay grades 2 steps above your old position. For a moment, Ethan was speechless. Then he looked back toward the festival grounds, where Mira and her family were emerging from the VIP tent, where dozens of different species from across the galaxy mingled and celebrated, where the universe had suddenly become both larger and smaller in the span of a single day. I'm interested, he said finally, but I have one condition. Name it, Chief Mendez replied. We need better water safety protocols for non-human visitors. Training for lifeguards on different species capabilities, maybe dedicated alien swimming areas with appropriate supervision. There was a pause, then a chuckle. Already thinking like a specialist, I see. I'll bring it up with the mayor tomorrow. For now, you'd better give those reporters something. You're trending on every platform in the solar system. As Ethan ended the call and turned back to face the cameras, he realized something had fundamentally changed. Not just for him, or for Mira and her family, but perhaps for human-alien relations as a whole. One simple act of courage, witnessed and shared by millions, had created a ripple effect that was still expanding. A reporter called out, Mr. Cole, what's next for you after today's heroics? Ethan smiled, learning to swim with aliens. 6 months after the Lake Meridian incident, Ethan Cole stood on the deck of the newly constructed Interspecies Aquatic Center, watching as his most determined student prepared for her next challenge. Remember, Mira, he called out, slow and steady. Focus on your breathing first, then your movement. The young Lamari nodded, her blue-violet skin shimmering under the specialized lighting designed to mimic the conditions of her homeworld. She stood at the edge of the shallow training pool, toes curled over the edge, eyes fixed on the water with a mixture of determination and lingering fear. I am ready, Teacher Ethan, she announced, her translator rendering her musical language into clear English. From the observation area, her parents watched anxiously. Vanner and Linnea had become fixtures at these weekly lessons, gradually overcoming their own fear of large bodies of water as they supported their daughter's progress. Whenever you're ready, Ethan encouraged. I'm right here. Mira took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and stepped forward. She slipped into the water with barely a splash, immediately implementing the floating technique Ethan had taught her. For several seconds, she simply lay on her back, face above water, arms gently moving at her sides. Then, with careful precision, she rolled onto her stomach and began a modified breaststroke, propelling herself toward the center of the pool. Ethan followed alongside, wading through the chest-deep water, ready to assist if needed. But Mira was doing wonderfully on her own. In the months since her near drowning, she had transformed from terrified to tentatively comfortable in water, a remarkable achievement for a species evolved on a desert world. Excellent, Ethan called as she reached the midpoint of the pool and turned back. Your form is perfect. When she reached the edge again, Mira pulled herself up and sat with her feet dangling in the water, breathing hard but smiling broadly. I did it, she said, her skin flushing a deeper blue with pride. I swam all the way without stopping. You certainly did. Ethan sat beside her. How did it feel? Mira considered the question seriously, as she did all questions. Less frightening. More like floating among stars. That's a beautiful way to think about it. Ethan nodded. The weightlessness of water is a bit like space, isn't it? From the observation area, Vanner approached, still keeping a cautious distance from the pool's edge. You have worked miracles, Ethan Cole. On my world, they are speaking of the water-fearless child as an inspiration. It was true. Mira's progress had been documented and shared widely among the Lamari people. What had begun as a private arrangement between Ethan and Mira's family had evolved into something much larger. The Interspecies Aquatic Center where they now trained had been jointly funded by Earth's Diplomatic Corps and the Lamari Confederation, a testament to how a single rescue had rippled outward to affect interstellar relations. The miracle worker is Mira, Ethan insisted. I'm just the guide. After Mira had dried off and changed back into her regular attire, a shimmering tunic adapted for Earth's cooler climate, the family invited Ethan to join them for dinner at their temporary residence in the diplomatic quarter. These post-lesson meals had become a tradition, one that Ethan looked forward to each week. The Lamari diplomatic residence was a curious blend of their homeworld aesthetics and Earth accommodations. The lighting was kept low, the temperature significantly warmer than most humans preferred, and the air was scented with spices that reminded Ethan of cardamom and saffron. The walls were adorned with holographic images that shifted between desert landscapes of their homeworld and water features from Earth, a visual representation of the cultural bridge being built. As they ate a meal consisting of both Earth and Lamari cuisine, conversation turned to the upcoming Interspecies Cooperation Summit, where Mira had been invited to speak about her experience. I am nervous, she admitted, picking at a piece of flatbread. So many important people will be listening. Just speak from your heart, Ethan advised. Your story is powerful enough without embellishment. Linnea, who had been quieter than usual throughout the evening, suddenly spoke up. We have received news from home today. The council has been discussing your actions more extensively, Ethan Cole. Something in her tone made Ethan pay close attention. Oh, in what context? Vanner and Linnea exchanged a look that Ethan had come to recognize as their way of deciding who should deliver potentially sensitive information. The Lamari Confederation is proposing a formal alliance with Earth, Vanner finally said. Not merely trade or diplomatic relations, but a true defensive and cultural partnership, the first such alliance we have offered to any species in over 3 centuries. Ethan nearly choked on his drink. Because of what happened at the lake. That was the catalyst, Linnea confirmed. But the decision is based on months of observation since then. Your continued dedication to Mira, the construction of this center, the new safety protocols implemented at tourist destinations, the emergency response training programs for non-human physiology, all of which indicate, Vanner continued, that despite humanity's flaws, there is something uniquely valuable in your species' capacity for altruism toward those different from yourselves. Ethan felt the weight of the pendant against his chest, the emblem of sealedness that he had worn every day since the ambassador had presented it to him. What had seemed like a simple act of rescue had somehow become the foundation for interstellar politics. "I'm just one person," he said, uncomfortable with the implications. "I can't represent all of humanity." "Perhaps not," Linnea agreed. "But symbols matter, Ethan Cole. They shape perception and policy alike." Before the conversation could continue, Ethan's specialized communication device, issued to him when he'd taken the position of interspecies emergency response specialist, emitted a sharp alert tone. "Cole here," he answered, pressing the receive button. "We've got a situation at East Side Mall," came the voice of his dispatcher. "Gravitational mishap at the Centaurian restaurant. Multiple species involved, at least 3 injured. Need your expertise ASAP." "On my way," Ethan confirmed, already rising from the table. "Sorry," he told the Lamari family. "Duty calls." Mira looked disappointed but understanding. "Will you still come to watch me speak at the summit?" "Wouldn't miss it for the world," Ethan promised, gathering his things. "Or any world, for that matter." As Vanner walked him to the door, he placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder, a gesture the normally touch-averse Lamari reserved for those they considered family. "The Alliance proposal will be made public tomorrow," he said quietly. "Your government officials will want to speak with you. They will try to use you as a diplomatic tool." Ethan sighed. "I figured as much. Any advice?" "Remember that you earned the emblem of Sealdis not for politics, but for compassion. Let that guide you." With a grateful nod, Ethan headed out into the night, toward his next emergency. The gravitational mishap turned out to be an understated description. The newly opened Centaurian restaurant in East Side Mall featured a specialty dining section where gravity was adjusted to match that of Alpha Centauri b, approximately 1.2 times Earth normal. A malfunction had caused the gravitational field to fluctuate wildly, reaching nearly 3 times Earth normal before emergency systems kicked in. By the time Ethan arrived, local paramedics had stabilized the human victims, but several non-human mall visitors were still being assessed. The scene was chaotic, regular emergency workers trying to coordinate with alien medical personnel, mall security attempting to keep curious onlookers back, and news drones hovering overhead, broadcasting live. Ethan's heart sank when he recognized one of the injured aliens, a young Tauran diplomat he'd met at a recent training session. The stocky humanoid was clutching his chest, his normally ruddy complexion pale and grayish. "Goran," Ethan said, kneeling beside him. "What happened?" Gravity shifted, the Tauran gasped. "Felt like something crushed my thorax. Can't expand properly to breathe." Ethan quickly assessed the situation, recalling his training on Tauran physiology. Unlike humans, Taurans had a respiratory system that relied on significant thoracic expansion. The sudden gravitational pressure would have been like a vice around his chest. "I need a thoracic stabilizer and respiratory support," Ethan called to the nearby medical team. When they looked confused, he simplified. "Oxygen and a chest brace, modified for Tauran physiology. Check my kit in the vehicle." As they rushed to retrieve the equipment, Ethan noticed something disturbing. Just like at Lake Meridian, a crowd had gathered, many with their devices out, recording the aliens in distress. Some were even live streaming, providing commentary on the injured non-humans as if they were exhibits rather than people in pain. "Show some respect," Ethan snapped at the closest group of onlookers. "These are diplomatic representatives, not entertainment." A few had the decency to look embarrassed and lower their devices, but most continued filming. One young man stepped forward, his expression challenging. "Public space, public event," he said, gesturing with his high-end camera. "Besides, people want to see this. My feed's got 10,000 viewers right now." Before Ethan could respond, a commotion near the restaurant entrance drew his attention. Mall security was trying to prevent several human teenagers from entering the still dangerous area, but they were pushing past, phones held high. "This is ridiculous," Ethan muttered, turning back to his patient. The medical team had returned with his specialized kit, and he focused on stabilizing Goran's breathing. Once the Tauran's condition had improved, Ethan moved on to the other non-human victims. A pair of Eridani with gravitationally induced neural disruption and an elderly Nereidan suffering from dehydration after the gravity flux had compressed their water retention organs. Throughout it all, the cameras kept rolling, the feeds kept streaming, the commentary continued, much of it disturbingly xenophobic. Look at the blue one squirming. That bull guy sounds like he's mooing when he coughs. Bet they wish they'd stayed on their own planets now. By the time all patients had been stabilized and transported to appropriate medical facilities, Ethan was seething with frustration. As he packed up his equipment, the mall manager approached, looking harried. "Thank you for your quick response," she said. "This could have been a diplomatic nightmare." "It still might be," Ethan replied grimly. "Did you see all those people filming? The comments they were making?" The manager sighed. "Not much we can do about that. Freedom of expression and all that. Freedom to dehumanize suffering beings? They're not human, technically," she pointed out, then winced at her own words. "Sorry, poor choice of words. Listen, we're reviewing our gravity field safety protocols. This won't happen again." Ethan nodded tersely and finished packing up. As he headed toward the exit, the young man with the expensive camera intercepted him. "Hey, you're that guy from the lake, right? The one who saved the alien kid? Man, my subscribers would love an interview. The hero of Lake Meridian, now saving aliens at the mall. It's a great narrative." Ethan stopped short. "A narrative? Is that what this is to you? People were injured today. Some could have died." The man shrugged. "But they didn't, thanks to you. That's the story people want. Humanity saving the day. Makes us look good. Makes us look good," Ethan repeated slowly, "while you stand by and film instead of help." Again, the camera operator had the grace to flush slightly. "Hey, I'm documenting, not interfering. Besides, what could I do? I don't have your training." "You could start by showing some basic respect," Ethan replied, then brushed past him, too tired to continue the argument. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. The day's events kept replaying in his mind. The injured aliens, the callous observers, the pending alliance announcement. Around 3 a.m., he gave up trying to rest and sat at his computer, searching for news about the mall incident. What he found was disturbing. The footage had indeed gone viral, but not in the way he'd hoped. While some commentators praised the emergency response, many of the most popular feeds focused on the aliens' suffering as if it were some kind of entertainment. Worse, there was growing pushback against the rumored Lamari Alliance proposal, even before it had been officially announced. Earth for Humans was trending, along with No Alien Alliance and Remember Proxima. The latter referred to a minor trade dispute with Proxima Centauri colonists the previous year, hardly the existential threat it was being portrayed as in the inflammatory posts. Ethan was still scrolling through the disturbing content when his official communication device chimed with an incoming message. It was from Dana Wilson, his liaison at the Diplomatic Corps. "Emergency meeting at HQ, 6 a.m. Alliance announcement leaked. Media firestorm building. Your presence required." Ethan sighed and sent a quick acknowledgement. 3 more hours, and he'd be thrust into the political arena he'd been dreading. He spent the remaining time reviewing footage from both Lake Meridian and the mall incident, trying to understand the disconnect between his experience and the public reaction. The Diplomatic Corps headquarters was buzzing with activity despite the early hour. Ethan was immediately ushered into a conference room where a dozen officials sat around a table, expressions grim. Ambassador Tellura was present as well, her normally vibrant blue skin looking pale and tired. "Mr. Cole," began the Secretary of Interspecies Relations, a stern woman named Dr. Evelyn Chun. "I assume you're aware of the situation?" "I know the alliance proposal leaked," Ethan replied cautiously, "and that there's been some negative public reaction." "Some negative reaction," repeated Dr. Chun, gesturing to a large display screen that showed various news feeds and social media trends. "That's putting it mildly. We're looking at organized protests in 12 major cities, a 15-point drop in public approval for non-human immigration policies, and calls for congressional hearings on alien influence." Ambassador Tellura spoke, her translator rendering her musical language into somber tones. It appears that the goodwill generated by your heroic act at Lake Meridian was more localized than we had assessed, or more temporary," added another official. "The mall incident yesterday has reignited concerns about compatibility issues between species. The gravitational malfunction is being spun as evidence that we're rushing integration without proper safety measures." Ethan looked from face to face, trying to understand. "So what do you want from me?" Dr. Chen leaned forward. "We need you to make a statement. You're the face of positive human-alien relations. Your rescue of the Lumari child was a defining moment. People listened to you." "My rescue," Ethan said slowly, "which went viral precisely because dozens of people stood by filming instead of helping. That's the dynamic you want me to lean into." A younger official spoke up. "We've prepared some talking points, emphasizing shared values, mutual benefits of alliance, your personal connections with the Lumari family." Ambassador Talura raised a hand, silencing the human officials. "Perhaps we should ask Ethan Cole what he thinks should be said." All eyes turned to Ethan. He took a deep breath, remembering Vanner's parting words. "Remember that you earned the emblem of Sealdis not for politics, but for compassion." "I think," he said carefully, "that we're missing the real issue here. This isn't about an alliance, or even about species differences. It's about a disturbing trend in human behavior, the tendency to document suffering rather than alleviate it." "That's hardly a diplomatic angle," objected Dr. Chen. "Maybe not," Ethan conceded. "But it's the truth. At Lake Meridian, people filmed a drowning child. At the mall yesterday, they live-streamed injured diplomats. In both cases, the focus wasn't on helping, but on capturing content to share." The room fell silent as his words sank in. Finally, Ambassador Talura spoke. "This observation aligns with Lumari concerns. Our cultural anthropologists have noted this behavioral pattern and questioned its implications for long-term relations." "Then that's what we need to address," Ethan insisted. "Not with prepared statements and political spin, but with honest conversation about who we want to be as a species when we step onto the galactic stage." Dr. Chen looked skeptical. "And you propose to start this conversation how, exactly?" Ethan thought for a moment, then said, "The Interspecies Cooperation Summit. Mira is already scheduled to speak about her experience. What if we expand that, show both incidents side by side? The rescue and the mall. The contrast between action and observation. Challenge people to think about which represents humanity's true face." The discussion continued for another hour, officials debating risks and benefits of various approaches. In the end, they agreed to a modified version of Ethan's proposal, a joint presentation at the summit, featuring both him and Mira, addressing the complex realities of human-alien relations. As the meeting broke up, Ambassador Talura approached Ethan privately. "The emblem of Sealdis serves you well," she observed, gesturing to the pendant he wore. "You continue to choose the difficult path of truth over the convenient path of politics." "I'm not sure everyone in that room would consider that a compliment," Ethan replied with a small smile. "Perhaps not," the ambassador acknowledged. "But the Lumari do. Whatever comes of this summit, know that you have honored your life debt to Mira's family with integrity." The week leading up to the summit was a whirlwind of preparation. Ethan worked closely with Mira and her family, helping the young Lumari refine her speech while continuing their swimming lessons. Despite the political tension surrounding the alliance proposal, these sessions remained a sanctuary of simple progress and genuine connection. On the day of the summit, the International Convention Center was packed with delegates from 24 spacefaring civilizations, human diplomatic personnel, and media representatives from across the globe. Security was tight following online threats from extremist, Earth-first groups, but the atmosphere inside was one of cautious optimism. Ethan found Mira backstage, her skin shifting through nervous patterns of blue and violet. She wore formal Lumari attire, a flowing robe embroidered with symbols of her family lineage, and looked far older than her years. "Nervous?" he asked, kneeling to her eye level. She nodded. "What if I cannot make them understand?" "Just speak your truth," Ethan advised. "That's all any of us can do." The summit's opening ceremonies were predictably formal. Speeches from Earth's Secretary General, the Galactic Cooperative's representative, and various diplomatic figures. Finally, the moderator announced the special presentation on cross-species emergency response, lessons and challenges. As Ethan walked onto the stage with Mira, he was struck by the sea of faces, human and non-human alike, all focused intently on them. The symbolism wasn't lost on him. A human emergency responder and a Lamari child, representing the future of interspecies cooperation. Mira spoke first, her young voice clear and confident as she recounted her near-drowning experience and subsequent journey to overcome her fear of water. She spoke of Ethan's rescue, her family's life debt, and the broader connections formed between their peoples. In Lamari tradition, she concluded, we say that true character emerges in moments of crisis. At Lake Meridian, I witnessed both the best and worst of humanity, those who would watch suffering and those who would end it. I am grateful that Ethan Cole was there to show me humanity's better nature. When it was Ethan's turn to speak, he stepped to the podium feeling the weight of expectation. The diplomatic corps wanted reassurance. The public wanted heroics. The aliens wanted insight into human nature. Instead of the carefully vetted speech prepared for him, Ethan began by activating the large display screen behind him. Side by side, footage appeared, the Lake Meridian rescue on one side, the mall incident on the other, both showing the same disturbing pattern, crowds filming as others suffered. This is the uncomfortable truth we need to confront, Ethan said, gesturing to the images. In an age where documentation has become reflexive, we risk losing something essential, our instinct to help first and share later. A murmur ran through the audience, but Ethan continued. I'm not here to shame anyone. I'm not even here to claim moral superiority. What happened at Lake Meridian could have ended tragically if I'd arrived a minute later. What happened at the mall could have been a diplomatic disaster without specialized emergency protocols. He touched the emblem of Seal This at his throat. This symbol was given to me by the Lamari people to honor a single act of courage. But true courage isn't found in grand, viral moments. It's in the daily choice to see others, regardless of species, as beings worthy of our immediate help, not just our documentation. Ethan turned to look at Mira, who watched him with solemn eyes. The proposed alliance between Earth and the Lamari Confederation has generated controversy. Some fear we're moving too quickly toward integration. Others worry about cultural compatibility. These are valid concerns that deserve thoughtful discussion. He faced the audience again. But perhaps the most important question isn't whether we should ally with non-human species. It's whether we're being honest about who we are. Are we the civilization that reaches out a hand to drowning children? Or are we the civilization that records their struggle for our feeds? The hall was silent now. Hundreds of beings, human and alien alike, absorbing his words. I believe we can be better, Ethan concluded. I believe the instinct to help is stronger than the instinct to observe. I believe that when faced with a clear moral choice, like a drowning child, most of us would drop our devices and dive in. That's the humanity worth allying with. That's the humanity I hope we choose to be. As Ethan finished, the hall remained silent for several long seconds. Then, from the Lamari delegation, Ambassador Talura rose to her feet and pressed her palms together in the traditional gesture of respect. One by one, other delegates, human and non-human, stood as well, until the entire hall was on its feet. In the months that followed, the ripples from that speech spread far and wide. The Lamari Alliance proposal was approved, though with additional safeguards and a longer implementation timeline to address public concerns. More significantly, a cultural shift began, subtle at first, then increasingly evident. News organizations adopted new ethical guidelines for reporting on interspecies incidents. Schools implemented active assistance training alongside traditional first aid. Social media platforms developed features that encouraged users to seek help before recording emergencies. The Interspecies Aquatic Center expanded into a full-fledged cultural exchange facility, with Mira as its youngest instructor teaching Lamari children about water safety while human children learned about desert survival techniques. Ethan continued his work as an emergency response specialist, developing new protocols for the unique physiological needs of Earth's growing non-human population. 1 year after the Lake Meridian incident, Ethan stood with Mira and her family at the edge of the lake, watching the sunset during the opening ceremony of the second annual Interspecies Cultural Festival. The event had been redesigned with enhanced safety measures, dedicated emergency response teams for each species, and, most noticeably, a Compassion Before Content campaign that encouraged festival-goers to help first, document later. "It looks different this year," Mira observed, her English now fluent without need of a translator. "Better different, I hope," Ethan replied. Vanner nodded. "The lessons were difficult, but valuable. Both our peoples have grown from this experience." As they watched, a small commotion erupted near one of the food stalls. An elderly human woman had apparently tripped and fallen. Without hesitation, nearby festival attendees, human and alien alike, moved to help her up, offer water, find a place for her to sit. Not a single recording device was visible. "See that?" Ethan said quietly to Mira. "That's who we can be when we remember what matters." Mira's skin rippled with patterns of deep blue, the Lamari expression of profound satisfaction. "One person can change much," she said, repeating a phrase Ethan had taught her months ago. "One person can change everything," Linnea corrected gently, placing a hand on her daughter's shoulder. As the lake waters reflected the deepening colors of sunset, Ethan realized the truth of those words. The drowning incident had changed him, changed Mira, changed the relationship between their species. But the greater change had come afterward, in the daily choices to prioritize compassion over content, connection over documentation, action over observation. It wasn't a perfect world. There were still those who would rather film than help. There were still cultural misunderstandings and political tensions. But something fundamental had shifted, a recognition that in a universe of infinite diversity, the capacity to see suffering and choose to end it might be humanity's most valuable contribution to the galactic community. "Ready for your demonstration?" Ethan asked Mira, gesturing toward the lake where a crowd was gathering for the official water safety exhibition. Mira squared her shoulders, determination replacing nervousness. "Ready." Together, they walked toward the water's edge, the human who had once dove in to save a drowning alien child, and the child who had grown into a symbol of interspecies cooperation. Behind them, Vanner and Linnea followed, still cautious around water but no longer paralyzed by fear. And beyond them, humans and aliens together, watching not to document a spectacle, but to learn how to help each other survive. As Mira prepared to enter the water, she turned to Ethan one last time. "Thank you for grabbing my hand," she said simply. Ethan smiled. "Thank you for grabbing back." And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next story.